105.9 FM. Sorry we were not here yesterday, so WOVU played some special entertainment because unfortunately Rachel was not able to be here yesterday. So hopefully you enjoyed that special entertainment. But we are back today. We are back talking sports, and I got Tony Hollinsworth with me. How are you, Tony? What's going on, sir?
I'm great. How are you, Rachel? Hi to the city of Cleveland. I never got, unfortunately, the chance to be there, but I am a fellow Midwesterner, so I'm all a fan of the weather. You wait about 5 minutes, it's going to change. So we got some similarities, and I lived in Ohio for a little bit, so I've learned very quickly what OH means to the state of Ohio and to Ohioans everywhere. So
You never told me you lived in Ohio. When did you live in Ohio?
I sure did. I lived in Dayton, Ohio from 2019 to 2022. I lived there for about 3 years.
Oh, did you go to school there? What were you doing in Dayton?
I was stationed there actually. I worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for 3 years.
Oh, okay, in the Air Force.
Yep,
Oh, I didn't know that. You never told me that.
sure did, sure
I've
did.
been to Dayton like once in my life.
You ain't missing much, I
I
promise.
know.
Like you, like we were about an hour away from Cincinnati. I found out Ohio has this wonderful thing called jungle gyms. Super jealous. I wanted jungle gyms in Indianapolis so badly.
Yeah, it's funny because the night that I was there, we went to a party at Wright State, and we had went with this one guy. It was a whole bunch of girls and one guy, and I remember, we were at one of the gas stations off the interstate or whatever,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden the guy came back and he was like, "I just saw Goldberg in there," and we were like, "Who's Goldberg?" He's like, "He's a wrestler," and he was like, he asked him, he was like, "Are you Goldberg?" And he was like, "No." And he was like, "It was really him, y'all. It was really him." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." I didn't know who Goldberg was at the time, because I wasn't watching wrestling. But there was a Goldberg sighting at a gas station in Dayton when I went to Wright State one time.
Wow, I'll be darned. Yeah, I actually lived about 2 minutes from the Wright State campus, so I
Oh,
probably know
really?
exactly where you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. And the mead factory.
Yeah, I lived right off of Colonel Glenn Highway. Like technically, I lived in base housing right there. I was about
Okay.
probably 15 minutes from the Green, if you know where the Green's at, just
No.
south of Dayton. I lived in
Mm-mm.
Beaver Creek technically.
Okay. Yeah, I was just there one night and that was it. We came in a party and we was gone the same night.
Right. Say, like I said, you're not
So
missing
yeah.
much. It was like I like Dayton, but I was like, man, Dayton is kind of a little small town. It's not bad, it's growing, but it's a
Hmm.
little small town.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have no reason to ever go there. So that's why I never been. But when you in college, you'll try and do some of anything.
Oh yeah.
So what are your favorite sports teams?
So I am, even though I'm from Indianapolis, born and raised, I am a Dallas Cowboys fan to the end. My mom grew up in the 70s watching Roger Staubach and Tom Landry. So, of course, she fell in love with them. My brother actually grew up in the 90s watching Aikman, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer. So he became a Cowboys fan. So it kind of became a family tradition to root for Dallas. I grew up watching a lot of Chicago Bears games. So I have a soft spot for the Bears. After I joined the service, I fell in love with the Colts a little bit. And of course, that's after Andrew Luck, of course, ends up retiring and whatnot. This, of
Hmm.
course, seems to be my luck. But I follow just about everybody in the NFL. In college, I am a huge Michigan State fan. I got accepted into Michigan State. LSU was also always my dream school. I got accepted into it. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for those two. But like I said,
Hmm.
I tend to cover a lot of the Big Ten. So I've followed your Buckeyes pretty
Hmm.
frequently, pretty extensively. I tend to root for them, especially over the other team up north. That we're just not gonna mention them.
Well, we appreciate that. All the fans that we can possibly have. My other producer on the other side of the wall is a huge Michigan fan. So me and him, get into a lot. You're an Ohio person, and it's your birthright to root for Ohio State.
Oh yeah.
So I don't understand the defectors. I don't understand the traitors. The people that live in Toledo. I'm like, you live in Toledo, Ohio, not Toledo, Michigan.
Hmm.
There was a war over that little piece of land too.
Yeah.
And nobody died, fortunately, but it was a little war. So we got to take on the Toledo area. So I kind of hate Ohio people rooting for Michigan. So, we appreciate all the, people who don't root for Michigan and stuff like that. And we appreciate all Buckeye fans. So, George says, so yeah, that was something that we were going to talk about. And Tony said he addressed yesterday on his show. But George says he wants to get our thoughts on Northwestern and their latest events costing Pat Fitzgerald his job, since we are in Big Ten country. So we can go ahead and open up the show with that. We'll get to Guardians in a little bit. But Tony, you said you got a chance to talk about this a little bit. So can you inform our audience? I got a chance to read up on this today. So, this was a pretty big deal, Pat Fitzgerald, being fired from Northwestern. There were some sexual abuse allegations, some hazing allegations, some racism allegations. It's a kerfuffle going on all at once. So can you tell our audience a little bit about that situation going on so we can talk about it?
Yeah, so this honestly kind of leads me to a couple things with this, and especially being in Big Ten country, we've noticed over the last couple years, Pat Fitzgerald has been the golden boy of Northwestern. He was a previous player. He helped take him to the Rose Bowl way back in the day, and kind of helped elevate Northwestern to where we never knew Northwestern to be a powerhouse or be a prominent school in the sports world, but they were always there, and he was basically the golden child. I think it was coming to a point where Northwestern was searching for a reason to fire Pat Fitzgerald. The fact that this comes out, the fact that this finally comes out now, especially after they go 1-11, they haven't won a game on U.S. soil in almost 2 years, I think was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. For anybody that doesn't know, if you actually go to their website, thedailynorthwestern.com, it'll actually go in depth about some of the hazing, some of the sexual assault allegations. And I think what a lot of this happened was that Pat Fitzgerald is trying to play the plausible deniability card of, whatever happens, I don't really want to know about it because I don't want it to cost me my job type of deal. And ended up
Mm-hmm.
costing him anyway. And I'm one of those, growing up kind of in the service, we had a few of those weird hazing techniques and those few hazing rumors that happened. Some of them had actually started to go away. But when you're a head coach like that, you know everything that goes on. So the fact that he let it go, he let it get to that point, and he didn't put his foot down. None of his other staff, the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, the conditioning coaches, whatever, didn't put a stop to this. Is what really kind of blows my mind, is that he wanted to try to take a laissez-faire, the whole hands-off ordeal, and just didn't choose to address it. Now, why, I don't necessarily know, but I'm honestly not surprised that he ended up getting fired for it. It's one of those, it needed to happen. If again, if something's happening, you're just trying to turn a blind eye and just hope that it doesn't surface, you're just as guilty and just as in the wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, sports departments are too big. The world is too big. Everybody gets hold of information. I mean, he would have to know that when these allegations got out, he was going to lose his job. Now, you said that Northwestern had been looking to separate. Was he appeared to be the golden child, there.
Mhm.
So they were upset about the direction that their football team is going in. Well, they're going to be getting new coaches every couple of years because Northwestern just face it, I believe all schools are great schools. I believe Ohio
Mhm.
State is equivalent to Harvard because the material 2 plus 2 doesn't change because it's on the board at Ohio State and it's on the board
Mhm.
at Harvard. What has changed about the answer? It's not magical because it's on Harvard. So, they
Right.
teach the same at every school. Concepts don't change because they're at one school versus the other. So I look at it, Northwestern's supposed to be this great school or whatever. So obviously they're known to be this, quote unquote academic school. And sometimes they've maybe tried to play spoiler, but they've never really been any good in athletics and stuff like that. So I don't know why this is coming as a surprise, that he was going to lose his job anyway eventually because Northwestern just isn't good, or am I wrong?
Oh, no, not at all. And I think it's one of those too. You look at the conference that Northwestern is in with the Big Ten. I mean, you have so many
Hmm.
other options that really aren't that far. If you're around the Chicago area, you can go just up north to Wisconsin, who is a powerhouse football team who's potentially could be a contention in the Big Ten West. You have Iowa just to the west. You're in real close to Ohio State. You're real close to Michigan State, Michigan, IU. You're close to all of these schools that honestly have better potential than Northwestern does. Now, one thing I was kind of wondering with Northwestern, and I don't know if you happen to read or hear this or not, but initially when this first came out, they actually gave him a 2-week basically unpaid suspension during the
Yeah, I
off
saw
season
that.
because of this. Now, to your point, I think what happened is once this got social media's attention and once this also got to really mainstream media's attention, it blew up so quickly and so fast. I don't think they were honestly expecting this to go the way that team. We're going to kind of try to sweep this under the rug. Hopefully, it doesn't go up into anything too big. And then they turn around and fire him. I was actually talking to a couple other college football fans, and they brought a kind of unique perspective to this. And I'll kind of pose the question to you, Rachel. Do you think that he'll turn around and actually sue Northwestern, even though this isn't technically double jeopardy because he's not charged with a crime, but the fact that he's technically being punished twice for the same thing because they already handed him down the suspension and then they fire him? Do you think that would have any type of substance or any type of a case to be able to say, well, they are wrong for basically not taking their time and what they wanted to do for a final decision?
Well, we live in a very litigious society, so nothing would surprise me if he decided to sue or not. But, at the end of the day, look at the environment that Maryland had as well, where you had
Mhm.
somebody who actually died because of hazing and not being able to give water breaks and stuff like that. They had to change their culture. So, some of these coaches, they just, have to get up out of there. And, there's a lot of things tied to this, and I'm sure more will come out. But like you have said, at first he was suspended, but once it's sad that it takes social media to change the winds of things of this
Mhm.
nature.
Yep.
Where it was initially okay, but then more people found out about it, and then you're like, I had to change your heart. I had to fire him immediately. Well, you
Yeah.
had that option on the table prior to suspension, but you decided not to.
Yeah.
Sometimes people take care of their own, and that makes the athletic director look bad too, because you were willing to brush this under the rug and just suspend them for it. As applies, you got sexual abuse claims. Has anybody learned from Michigan State with Larry Nasser, or even the doctor at Ohio State that was molesting the wrestlers and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Have we learned that nothing stays under the rug for very long? So,
Mhm.
I'm not surprised anymore. Nothing shocks me anymore.
No,
When you
and
hear about, you're surprised it is at Northwestern,
mhm.
considering the reputation they have, but I'm not shocked anymore.
It's one of those, even though it's not exactly similar, but it is kind of in a way to the Greg Sandusky thing with Penn State. Penn State was one of
Yeah.
those great academic school, kind of a great Penn State had a better athletic history and a better collegiate, sport history than Northwestern has. But kind of the
Hmm.
same thing. They were held in very high regard. They're one of these schools that they kind of take the fact that you're playing for Penn State, you're playing for that team more than actual winning is important to them. And honestly, the same way, it was a bad culture. And it hurt Penn State for a long time after that,
Hmm.
after those allegations came out. Now for Northwestern, like you said, they're already bad. I think this is one of those, it's going to take them a long time to recover. And much to your point, I think they're probably going to rotate through coaches for quite a while because they're going to have bad rosters. They're going to have to try to clean basically everything out, bring in a new group, and reestablish hopefully a positive culture and hopefully get back to doing what they should have been doing, playing good football, having these student athletes actually enjoy themselves, being a part of a team and camaraderie.
Yeah, I mean, tear it down to the studs. I mean, you don't technically rebuild in college, but you got to get that culture gone and some good kids in there who can change the culture and get this bad juju away from the team, and be a new Northwestern. Because George asked a great question too, about, do we expect a mass exodus in the transfer portal, like it happened for Penn State and stuff like that with Jerry Sandusky. I don't know if the portal was like, crazy back then, like when that first happened, compared to the way it is now. But I do expect some kids to transfer. So hopefully some schools will be welcoming to them. And that, unfortunately their program is probably going to be decimated like other programs.
Yeah, and I think there will be, but I'll be honest too, and it's not really a shot at Northwestern, but we also have to be a little bit realistic here. It's not like there's a lot of super great talent at Northwestern either. Like they're kind of more known for some offensive linemen here and there, kind of a few of these star-studded players, and a lot of these kids, honestly, are probably already going to be leaving, especially thanks to NIL. Luckily for them, they can go to another brand, they can make more money, they can build
Mm-hmm.
themselves, or if they want to go compete for a national championship, there are other collegiate schools in the area that would more than happily take them. So I don't know if there'll be a mass exodus. There might be, just to get away. But I would also hope to for, I would say, a lot more of the freshmen, because to me, a lot of the seniors and juniors that probably went through this, it's kind of that old adage of, well, I went through it, so you have to go through it, just as, the rite of passage or whatever they want to call it. I've never been a big fan of that. If you truly want to be better, if you truly want to, make sure that somebody else after you has a better lifestyle or doesn't have to go through that, that has to be part of the change. So I hope honestly there isn't a mass exodus. I hope there are kids that are able to see this and take this and go, hey, we want to be the reason that this flipped around and we started to actually build a positive culture out of this, not just keep it as a negative and, try to go with this negative stigma holding over us. So I'm hoping there's not, but more than likely, I think there probably will be a few students leaving just to get away from it.
Yeah, because if you were a freshman, would you stay or would you go?
I would honestly go, because I mean, at that
Okay.
point, honestly, you've probably already been through it, and it's not really coming out until some of these guys that were bringing up these allegations. One of them was back in 2009. That was 14 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, well, obviously my teammates don't have my back. Some of them actually pressured or put me through this to go through it. So no, I'd rather leave and go somewhere else and start fresh.
Yeah, man, it's just tragic, especially when it comes to the sexual abuse and stuff like that. I just,
Mhm.
have a hard time, and you just, hear about this type of stuff happening throughout the country, and I just don't understand, how people could do this, how people could do this to other people. I understand why people don't report it,
Mhm.
because sports are very machismo, and nobody wants to put that out there because they're scared of the questions, that they're going to get, and ridicule. Well, why didn't you do this sooner, and all that other
Mhm.
stuff, But we all know that survivors of sexual abuse don't come forward until years later, when they're comfortable, when they're ready to confront, their abusers and things like that. Was anybody listed specifically as far as the sexual abuse goes? Because that happened
Yeah.
before Pat Fitzgerald, but obviously they still have a pretty bad culture there.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody was listed specifically. I know the people that made the allegations, they've chosen to remain anonymous, so they haven't actually put a name to who they are, who are done it. By the looks of the report that the Daily Northwestern put out, it was mainly a lot of the upperclassmen doing it. Now, apparently the coaches were aware, but nobody actually made a step in to stop it. Now, to your point, I think it's crazy that in 2023 we're still going through this, and that nobody at some point between at least the last 14 years that we know of, potentially even longer, that nobody said, you know what, no, we need to stop this. This isn't right. This is weird. This is wrong. That is what kind of really baffles me more than anything, is that nobody at some point said, we don't need to do this with the hazing, the sexual assault allegations. There's even, you pointed out, and even in the report pointed out, potentially a couple of racism aspects as well. They're making the African American players, potentially shave their dreads, but the white guys could
Hmm.
keep their longer hair. I don't I don't know about that. I know with some sports teams, I know my swimming team in high school was weird. They would like shave their head to start the season, or they would dye their hair like bleach blonde or something weird like that. And I know for
Hmm.
African Americans, it's hard to grow your hair out like that because it's typically so curly. And for white players, it's a little easier to be able to grow the hair out. So I don't know if maybe that was a one of those hazing initiations where they everybody shaves and maybe one player's hair grows out more than the other, but still the fact that this is going on, the fact that he's trying to do this whole plausible deniability thing, and just I didn't know about it or I didn't want to know about it, that it I think people are both mad and disappointed more than anything that something like this happened. You're a pristine coach in a Division 1 football league with one of the top academic schools in the country, and you let this happen under your watch.
Yeah, he ain't the golden boy no longer. Well, Tony, we're going to go ahead and take our first break. So you're listening to Her in the Huddle on WOVU and 95.9 FM. We will be right back. 2 minutes.
Okay.
2 minutes. Hey, what's up? I'm on the show right quick. What's going on? Oh, you did? Okay, I was gonna come get it today. I don't know when I finish with my show. 7 o'clock, but I got somewhere to go. But I'll come pick it up tonight. Okay. All right. Bye. Thank you. Bye. All right, welcome back to Her in the Huddle, WOVU and 95.9 FM. This is your girl, Rachel Hill, the First Lady of Sports. I'm here with Tony Hollingsworth today. So there is no Brandy, there is no Eddie. They are both on vacation. One is in Florida, one is in Jamaica, and I'm stuck here in Cleveland, Ohio. But it's okay because I'm here with Tony today. I appreciate him joining the show and co-hosting with me. But always remember that you can keep it locked right here on your regular radio dial at 95.9 FM. You can download the WOVU app so you can listen to us on the go. You can listen to us online at WOVU.org, and you can always contact the station at 216-271-0959. Dylan, I think it is supposed to be muted, but it probably wasn't. You might have heard me talking. Sorry about that. I got a phone call, so I try to
It'll
end
be
them
okay.
very quickly. And I
It'll be
try to
okay.
end them. Yeah, it's funny because I have all Apple products. So, when you get a phone call, it comes through on your computer. It came through on my iPad and it came through on my phone as well. So, are you an Android person, Tony?
I am an Android person. I've been an Android person forever. It's funny. Everybody at work, with the exception of my boss, also has iPhones, and then they give me crap for it all the time. They're like, "You need to switch over," until they see my pictures, and then
I know.
they're like, "Okay, you got the better camera." They're like,
Yes.
you almost make us want to switch, almost." But they're just like you. They have everything Apple. They're like, everything's synced up, and I'm like, "Hey, I get it," because it's a pain in the butt to try to resync everything. I get it wholeheartedly.
I tell people, if you get with a group of people and somebody has a Samsung, I'm like, okay, we can take the picture with your phone because the Android's camera phone is crushing iPhone all day. So that's not even a fair argument or comparison or anything like that. But I'm an iPhone person. I used to be a Samsung person. I don't know what made me get away from it. I think one of the last Androids I had was the HTC Evo, and that gave me so many problems. I finally went over to Apple, and I've been with Apple since. So, but we wanted to talk a little bit because we're going to do Guardians last, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, was there anything else you wanted to address as far as NCAA football go? Pretty much everybody's, in training camps and stuff like that is pretty, quiet on the NCAA front, but anything else you want to discuss regarding NCAA?
Well, I do want to ask you, since you're the Buckeyes fan, and since you're the more the expert on Ohio State than I am, are Buckeyes fans nervous or excited about Kyle McCord taking over for CJ Stroud? He's one of the few. He's been in the system a couple years. He's had Ryan Day. He gets to work with Emmanuel Abuka. He gets to work with Marvin Harrison Jr. The defensive coordinator comes back for a second year, much improved defense from the year before. are there still high hopes and expectations? And do you guys think Kyle McCord's going to be the guy to at least keep the ship going?
I think so. He's had a chance to sit behind some pretty good quarterbacks, and I think a lot of it has prepared him for this moment. I think that there's a little trepidation that Buckeye fans have because right now we're stepping into the unknown. We've pretty much had top tier quarterbacks, who have draft potential, lead these Ohio State teams, and they've done it well. And it's just we're going into the unknown. But I think right now nobody really cares, who starts or who we win with. All it is about beating Michigan at this point.
Yeah.
This team can absolutely not lose to Michigan for a third year straight. So I think that's all we care about is that game. I think it's taking place on November 26th. We
Yep.
have that game circled, and nobody really cares about anything else at this point except for beating Michigan. So it's like I think people really don't care who's underneath center. Everybody has that game circled, and it's just about being Michigan. Because my thought is, and this is part of the argument that a lot of people have is, if Ryan Day continues to win game but doesn't beat Michigan, like what do you do with him? And I'm just like, you fire him. If
Yeah.
he loses to Michigan again this year, you fire him. You're not going to do the John Cooper. And John Cooper was there while I was there. So that Michigan only won one time when I was there in 4 years because I was there during the Cooper years. So
Yeah.
he got fired for not beating Michigan. This team cannot lose to Michigan for a third year in a row going into the big house this year. Can't do it. I don't
Yeah.
think anybody cares about anything else other than the Michigan game this year.
I was going to say because Sam Springer in the comments, he and I actually cover Big Talk, and we cover all the Big Ten, and that's a question we've actually asked and we discussed is should Ryan Day be on the hot seat? Because I mean he's 45-6 overall, but like you said, he's lost to Michigan twice. It's like part of me again, not being a Buckeyes fan, I'm like, man, that's hard to argue. Like you win about
And other
90% of your games,
programs,
you don't win the big one against your rival, but you're winning most of your games.
but other programs, this is a great benchmark. 6 losses over what, 3-4 years now? That's a
Yeah.
great benchmark, but it's not going
Yeah.
to get in Columbus. It's
Right.
just not going to get it.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. I say it's one of those we've talked about it, and I think all of us were like we would get it, but at the same time, like you said, with other programs, that's a great area to be in. That's a great problem to have if you only lose a few games over the last 6 years or so. Like that's a great
Michigan would
problem to have.
take that.
Huh?
Michigan would take that.
Oh, 100%
They would
Michigan
take
would
that.
take that. 100%
But
they would
Ohio
take that.
State, unacceptable.
That's fair. That's fair. And Sam is a Purdue fan, so for him,
Unacceptable.
he would be ecstatic if he was able to have. But I think he'd be in the same boat if they lost to IU. I think Sam would be like, I don't know, you might have to get the boot if you lose to IU.
Yeah, Sam. See, I'm on agreement. But it's just not going to cut it. So I think that's all anybody cares about is Michigan. And it's so crazy. That game between us and Georgia was a national championship game right there, and it's just
Hmm.
so crazy. Your field goal kicker, who had been reliable almost 90% of the time, hooks it left like that, and a game that Ohio State should have won, they could have won, and just unfortunately, they didn't. But Ryan Day almost won his first national title. He could have been there. Unfortunately, the way they chose to play defense towards the end of the game didn't, go well either. They kind of got gashed and burnt. And I know you talked about our new defensive coordinator, but he didn't really do his job either.
Yeah.
So I expect, full turnaround from this defense, but they haven't been recruiting that well defensively either. One of the things is, unfortunately, we're not known for the silver bullets defense, not being able to get all over the ball. Our secondary has been very weak as well. So we've allowed, we have the best receiving core in the country, pretty much, so to say. But, we've been letting other schools get it as well because we've struggled defensively,
Yeah.
as well in our recruiting. So, yeah, we can have all the wide receivers in the world. I say, you might have heard this line before, like the Steve Nash Phoenix Suns. We just want the ball back, but you also got to be able to play defense, and you got to be able to play it well because those breakdowns that you had against Georgia, that cost you the opportunity to play for the national championship. And
Yeah.
had you been able to make it to the national championship, you would have faced the TCU Horned Frogs, and you definitely won that national championship. But at the end of the day, Ryan Day can lose national championships, which he's lost one. But you can't lose against Michigan.
Yeah. And I think too, and no shot to Buckeye fans. I think you guys were kind of spoiled there for a little bit because you got to think you had both Bosa brothers and then you had Chase
Mm-hmm.
Young immediately following both of them. So for a period of what 6-7 years, you guys had one of the top pass rushers in college football easily. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that's a big thing with Ohio State is they don't have that really big star at pass rushing because that's really what Ohio State was known for. You had a great pass
Mm-hmm.
rusher on the other side. You had a great wide receiver. Now I know a lot of people kind of tend to hate on Ohio State quarterbacks, but I say this with every quarterback, even against Bama, and I hate Bama with a passion. Uh, when you go from a team like Ohio State, when you go from a team like Alabama, even look at Joe Burrow from LSU when he first came to Cincinnati. You're
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by 5-star talent everywhere on every position on both sides of the ball. And then you come to these NFL franchises that they've lost, 13, 14, probably plus games. They picked you first overall, and
Mm-hmm.
they're expected to be this uplifting transformational quarterback. That's hard to do when you go from guys that probably wouldn't even make the cut on an Ohio State, on a Bama, on a LSU to okay, now they're my number one guy and I have to try to make it work. And that's why,
Mm-hmm.
being a little, having a soft spot for the Bears in my heart, it's like, no, Justin Fields is a great quarterback. He just doesn't have anybody to throw to. You got
Mm-hmm.
to give him time. Look at Joe Burrow when he finally got Jamar Chase. He's been fantastic. Mac Jones kind of the same way. Doesn't really have anybody to truly throw to once he left, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, all of those great Alabama wide receivers. So
Mm-hmm.
I really hope people kind of come back down to earth on Ohio State quarterbacks. Like I think CJ Stroud's going to be great. It's
I
just
was just about to ask you that.
he's he's just stuck in Houston, unfortunately. But Houston has acquired a lot of good players. I mean, I think they're going to be stronger defensively, and historically, to me, they've kind of been more strong on the defensive side of the ball than they have offensively. But I think if they can get a couple good wide receivers. They got Robert Woods in free agency. They got Dalton Schultz for my Cowboys, who he's a decent tight end. I think CJ will be fine in the NFL as well.
I think he will too. All right, Tony, we're going to go ahead and take another break really quickly. You are listening to Her in the Huddle with Rachel Hill and Tony Hollingsworth, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Her in the Huddle with WOVU and 95.9 FM. This is your girl, Rachel.
All right, everyone. Sorry about that. Unfortunately, Rachel ended up actually losing power at the radio station, so we're going to go ahead and end the show. But hopefully, everybody enjoyed what they were able to see, though. I enjoyed Rachel being able to have me on. It's kind of a last second add on, but enjoyed being with Rachel as always. You can always catch her in the huddle every day. Well, not every day, every Monday and Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on WOVU 95.5. You can also catch Rachel Hill and the rest of the crew here on Her in the Huddle here on the ASAP channel. Appreciate everybody watching and viewing. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please let us know how we do. You can find us here. We have an app. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all of it. Appreciate all the love and support that everybody has given. Everybody have a great night, and we will see y'all later. Peace.